these phones that were being given for 20 bob a day, and I attempted to buy one. I was told I don't qualify. Sijui mimi sio hustler. Let me say quietly. Maybe Charles or Alice could speak to some of the issues that determine who will be able to access these devices, because I think access should be on a need-to basis. I don't know whether there is profiling on who. Ama nani alipata hiyo 20 bob in the audience here? Yeah, some you would go and they tell you don't qualify. So, and Alice has talked about the issue of public participation in such processes and all that. But also you mentioned that the citizens took CA to court for trying to deal with counterfeit devices. So as Kivuva responds, maybe I would want from a civil society organization perspective to also speak to whether sometimes we are shooting ourselves in the foot. But more specifically, can you speak to how can government policy and regulation enhance the affordability and availability of ICT devices?
Okay, thank you, Barack. Before I respond to this, Joseph is raising this issue of installing what the civil society has been calling spyware on people's devices. Maybe we'll need also to assure the public that it's actually not spyware, what that thing is doing, because if people are taking the wrong narrative and they are running with it, that's why they even went to court. So back to Barack on policies to lower the cost of devices. So yesterday I was talking to Dennis Somaya, and he was telling me that it's going to story mingi. Let's go to the point on how we can lower the cost of these devices. And I don't think there is a really clear line or answer. If it was that clear, the devices could be cheap at this moment. But of course, there are many policy interventions that can be done, including, of course, number one, usually lowering taxes and duties, import duties on these devices. When government came in power in 2002 in Kenya, I think one of the interventions was to lower the cost of ICT devices, and that included mobile phones and laptops. And after that, after the prices came down, we saw that there was actually increased uptake of the devices. And what we tell government is that you can see that there is revenue in these devices and you want to use that revenue for your recurrent expenditure. But if you make these devices accessible to the people, what are they doing with the devices? They are doing the service industry, manufacturing and all that. So you can still be able to recoup those funds through in another way, because the devices are being used to run the economy, to grow the economy, to increase your productivity in whatever industry you are working on. So taxes is at the top of my radar. And of course, talking of taxes, we have the USF, for example, that CA has. Is there a way that can be explored how the price of devices can be subsidized, especially at a certain point? Let's say devices that cost around 5,000 Kenya shillings, can they be subsidized using USF and have a target audience that those devices are targeted? The way we have the Hustler Fund, which is not targeted at the audience here. This audience here is not the audience for the Hustler Fund. But now, we can have an audience for affordable devices. And can we subsidize them, those devices? Talk to manufacturers, talk to Huawei, talk to Samsung, and subsidize that cost, maybe using the USF. And then because these devices are still going to the boda guy, they are going to the mama mboga, and they are using those devices for their socio-economic good, or even for schools and students and things like that. So that's also a way of lowering the cost. And that's why we are saying more productivity. When the society is more productive, we will have more revenue, more cash, more money flowing through the system. And then, of course, we can also promote local manufacturing. I know we have tried local manufacturing of devices, and sometimes we stumble, but we need to continue reiterating and continue trying. There was the Taifa laptop that was tried. I think it was being manufactured by one of the universities. And before then, if there is the OGs here, they can remember an organization called GTI. It was Gilgil Telecommunication Industries. And it was there in the 80s, and it was manufacturing telephone booths and telephone handsets. And those were before the days of the devices, that the more modern devices that we are using today. So we were actually doing manufacturing even in the 70s and 80s. And where did we stop? And we started using China as our manufacturing hub. And yet we have so many idle youth within our country. So with that, it means we can create our own fab labs, our own industries around it. And that, of course, goes with capacity building, meaning that the academia, the institutions, the TVETs, we can retrain our youth so that they can be able to be ready to go to the industry and support the manufacturing. And if you manufacture your own device, what does it mean? There is no import duty, for example, on the device. And so the cost will still go down. And manufacturing goes with innovation. So as we manufacture, we will still innovate. If you remember the first Chinese phone you saw in the market, they were terrible, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Those phones were terrible, but those phones now, those same companies, if you see the phones they are producing now, they are very good. They are competing with Samsung. They are competing even with Apple, because they imitated, but then after imitation, they innovated around it. Now they are very good. We can do it. And we even have the human capacity, because we say in Kenya, 60% of the population is youthful, but they are getting old because they are just in the streets, sitting in shopping centers, doing nothing. And of course, other policies we can employ. I know maybe Samsung are the experts in this, is to reduce the value chain. If you reduce the value chain, that is the marketing, distribution, and retail. Each person in that value chain gets something. If you reduce the value chain, you have policies that can be able to reduce that. It means that the cost can be passed down to the consumer, the end user. And of course, there is also one issue that has been talked about in probably giving loans on these devices, and or issuing the devices, and the telecom companies, for example, recouping the cost from maybe airtime or bundles. Those packages can also be used to ensure that the cost of devices go down. But one more that I think we can explore is the second-hand market. For example, within the government, there is usually the depreciation process of equipment. Because even laptops are devices, or even desktops, computers, for example. After 4 years, the depreciation in the asset register is zero. But that device to a school, or to a village polytechnic, or a community center, those devices are very good. Just like if a rich person squeezes a lemon, he might not want to squeeze it so much. So after 4 years, they are saying these computers are not good enough. Then what do these organizations do? They put those equipment in the store, because maybe they don't have a proper disposal policy. When you try to dispose, you are told you are corruption, you are selling to your people and all that. So the devices just are put in a store and they get old there. Is there a process that we can pick all these devices, or have a process after every 4 years, 5 years? Take these devices to the community. Let the community use these devices to learn, to grow themselves. And of course, there are many other interventions that we can discuss, but 10 minutes, thank you.
Thank you very much for those thought-provoking sentiments, Mr. Kivuva. And I think even as use of the Universal Service Fund evolves, probably some of the issues that you raise about disposal of assets. When we talk of disposal, sometimes we think of the ones that are destroyed, but in some cases they are just probably unusable to the institution because of the level of the institution that it is. Maybe we could have clear policies or mechanisms that can be used to pass this to the unserved and to the underserved areas. But I think we'll park that for another conversation. So I'll shortly be coming to the audience. I see the hands are already going up, but just allow Leonard to make his intervention, and then I'll come to you so that you can also bring in your perspective into this conversation. So Leonard, what innovative policy interventions could help reduce the cost of devices based on some of the issues that have been raised by all the other speakers?
Well, thank you very much, Barak. I've just been listening to all the panelists, and I think the entire space of devices is a research question. It need to be translated to a research question. And let's get quantitative right now so I can help Charles, because I saw Alice coming so hard on me. So let's try to do this. How many people have feature phones in this audience right now? Feature phones, keypads. How many?
Acclamation. The question, you raise your hand if you... Or maybe they don't know feature phones.
Okay, so don't raise that if that's not your primary phone. How many people have feature phones? So feature phones, you know,
Can you
Mulika
define
Mwizi.
a
So
feature
let's
phone?
use just the definition we had earlier.
How?
The Mulika Mwizi is something with a keypad, can't take a picture. How many have that? As a primary phone. Like that's a phone, number one, you know, you would rather never forget. You don't forget anyone. How many people have smartphones here? How many people have Samsung phones? No, I'm helping you.
You might be given another one.
How many people have iPhones? Okay, so the rest of obviously are smartphones, but from the other
These are
manufacturers.
hustlers.
So that's clear. Why I'm saying that is because yesterday there was one student in the audience who asked a very interesting question. And when the panelists here earlier on in the first session in the morning, they said they had talked about 5G, talked about 6G coming up, and Wi-Fi 6E and all these things. And then the student, a very innocent question, that all these good technologies you are talking about, how do we get to learn about them? Where are the materials to read this? To be honest, you can never do that on a feature phone, okay? Clearly, you cannot start reading 5G stuff on a feature phone. Now, I'll tell you why it's becoming a polynomial equation, because there are many variables. So last year we did a study together, funded by the ITU, and we worked on that together with the Communications Authority, University of Glasgow, and the Technical University of Kenya. And one thing that became clear is the cities of this country only make up 30% of the country. We might brush each other in the streets, you know, we have all this traffic on Thika Road or Mombasa Road, whatever. We make up 30% of the population. So that means there's 70% of us out there in the rural areas. So if we're talking about devices, we actually have to come from the 70 coming to 30. Why am I saying 30%? Because we fall in that part 30%, so we already have smartphones, right? So clearly we can access anything. You know, we can use all the Uber we want to use, we can use all the apps to read 5G content or whatever it is from Facebook or LinkedIn. But the 70% are somewhere in a rural area that probably have smartphones. We need to investigate that, which is now why I'm saying it's a research question. And probably most of them do not have the smartphones. So in that case, what it means is the questions of affordability then needs to be raised there. Probably they're missing this kind of devices to be able to access these services. But in general, what I'm trying to derive at is, I would probably recommend this to the Communications Authority and part of what we're talking about, innovative policies. So we need to set up a policy that sounds Kenyan, okay? Every country needs to have its policy. We can't go on winning marathons and we don't have a baseline definition of what's Kenyan. Well, it's a pity. Probably I was part of the PR team, I would say put this at the airport. The definition of this should be, what will be the phone with the lowest features that each Kenyan needs to have? And in this context, smartphone. I don't think, and I don't support, and I'll never support any conversation somewhere that's pushing for feature phones for people. When we do that, we pull back on economic growth. Now, who's building IoT? We want to build IoT services with smart sensors. We need to have that on an app. Why are we pushing to have people have feature phones? The government keeps coming up with new policies. Where do we make people read this? People want to apply for passports. These days, everything runs on eCitizen. Who wants to have a discussion on feature phones? that should be dead. I think we need to find a way where we put a policy that feature phones is not a Kenyan discussion, push it to one of the developing countries in another place, but not for this country, perhaps. So I'm just saying that as a recommendation of the Communications Authority and all the stakeholders who will be able to support this. Now, secondly, I also think why I'm saying the definition of a feature phone, of a baseline smartphone will come to this level. Maybe the regulator and some of the stakeholders will need to sit together and say, this is the lowest end, or this is the baseline of a phone we need to have. It needs to have a 2 GB RAM. It needs to have a camera with these specs. It needs to have maybe a storage of this capacity. We need to come to that definition. When we get to that definition, then we can talk about affordability. Because I think the question then will be, what should be the cost of that device? Because we do not want to leave the rural areas behind. They won't, the president means well, but you can't tax 30% people and make money. There's 70% out there you need to get more money from. So if you use an approach where you have a baseline phone that defines all these specs, and then we put a price to it as an affordable, price. Say it's 4,000 Kenya shillings or 3,000, because these days smartphones go to as cheap as 3,000, right? I'm not talking about Samsung. Maybe Samsung definitely you might have those that are a bit expensive. But if we were to define that is the cheapest smartphone, then we can work from that one, from that end backwards. Now, another variable that comes into it is the usage gap. So yesterday we had of the coverage going to 98%. But then it also makes sense to Safaricom, or it will hurt Safaricom. You are asking for 5G in Marsabit, and you do not even have a 4G phone. You're asking for 5G in Mombasa, and probably you don't have a phone that gets to 5G specs. So that's a challenge on their end. So if we're able to define these specs of a baseline phone, then we can start advancing the features from there. Add 4G, put a chipset of 5G, and then adding to what I think it's Mwenda who's just said. Those are my thoughts, but I want us to think together. So Finland is a country of 10 million people. And for quite a while, they've served the world with Nokia. We all enjoyed Nokia. How many never used Nokia? You all, at some point, saw Nokia somewhere, right? Do you know the population of Finland? 10 million people. What's our population? We are coming to 60 million people. You cannot depend on 10 million people out there building devices for you all the time. It's not right. I think what we need to do now is what he's saying. We need to build more maker spaces, more fab labs. It's a conversation I was having with Joseph, just sitting down, that we need to have more technical people developing things. We need to have these chipsets being built to a standard devised by Communications Authority. Saying this is the chipset that needs to go in, these are the standards of power, these are the standards of performance of the antennas, etc. And we need to give the youth the job then. But I think we have to change our mindset on that. So that allows us to have more of these devices being manufactured locally. Otherwise, we will always have this discussion around the devices being more expensive, because with that we don't have tax, so that means the device will be affordable for us. Now the last variable to which actually there's two. The second last is also in terms of taxes. I'm not an expert in economics and this discussions of taxation. My background is engineering. But I also think it doesn't make sense to tax something we don't really make. Like, for example, we cannot continue. I saw in the news 2 days ago that we just put 10% on importing devices. If you try to come with a device from abroad in this country, you are locked at the airport, unless you open it up, right? You are locked at the airport. But the country does not manufacture that. You cannot, that means we delay having borders use smartphones to generate money, because these days borders enjoy the fact that we can use Uber and get to them. We can use Bolt and get to them. And that's one part of the equation. What about we put smartphones for farmers in the rural areas? How about smartphones for healthcare in the rural areas? How about smartphones for schools in the rural areas in terms of content? And speaking of more devices, having all these devices of laptops, etc., going to these rural schools. So if we can make that tax-free, it will allow us to build more services or expand the way we do our business, and that tax can come in there. But on the devices, we have to rethink it. Now, the last point I have is, so devices do not only end at phones, because phones is just for us. But devices would also be needed in schools. Rural schools need devices. Rural hospitals need devices. And I think I agree with what Baraka said. Some of these laptops, assuming we use Core i5 laptops, and now we feel like some of the developments we are doing as a company need to Core i7, then we need to donate Core i5. So part of the innovative policies would actually have an app. probably added to the e-citizen. And this app allows company X, Samsung saying, okay, going forward, we are done with Core i3 computers. We are offloading on this app, so government needs to come and collect it to put to take to the schools that are renting the devices. We have a lot of these that are being thrown, so which turns into e-waste, another conversation probably for another day. But if we had an app driven by the government, managed by the Communications Authority of Kenya, that even you as an individual, when you feel you are done with the iPhone X, if you are going to sell it as a second hand, which works for you, that's fine. But if you feel you want to let it as a device to be used in another institution, you just post in that app. So it means now the government can collect that device and take it to places that devices are missing. If an institution like here, this is Safari Park says we are done with this set of computers, we can donate them to Busia, because maybe those people there are just doing the basics and then they don't need so many superior specs. But with such an innovative policy that is built within a platform, a digital platform, would enhance that to work. Thank you very much, Barack.
Thank you very much, Leonard, for that thought-provoking podcast. You've really brought it to the fore. I'm sure there are many questions from the audience, and there's a gentleman at the back there. I see a lady there. We'll take them real quick. Actually, let me start here. Introduce yourself. Make it a tweet in the interest of time.
Thank you very much. My name is Caroline Kakemu from Communications Authority of Kenya.
Yeah.
And I wish to, of course, thank the panelists for a very insightful discussion this morning. Mine is on the issue of computers, and I'm glad Leonard has been able to touch on that a bit, because I feel like there's a lot of discussion around mobile phones and ownership of mobile phones. And I appreciate the fact that 99% of Kenyans, they're accessing the internet through the mobile phones. But in my view, if you're really going to have meaningful connectivity and reap the full benefits of the internet, then laptops and computers are very critical. Because I'm seated here and I'm thinking, there are actually things I need to do from work, but I'm not able to do them on my mobile phone. So I'm imagining for someone who has to run a business, if you're going to improve service delivery, and especially in the government sector and also the education sector, I'm not sure whether we'll be able to teach using a mobile device. So for me, I think going forward, I really want to hear discussions around the ownership of computers, devices that can actually be able to support certain softwares and be able actually to drive the industry and support other industries. But of course, I appreciate the importance of mobile phones in what it's doing in terms of providing accessibility to the internet. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
My name is Joseph Kishu from JTF. My question will be to the Samsung person. Your devices, they are very popular in Kenya. But apparently there is a feature that has been disabled that is faulty. I don't know, is it something that is going to be enabled as more providers are doing faulty currently? Maybe you can answer that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barack. I'm Abel, Operations Manager, Kinde Engineering Works Limited. We've been talking about the intake and affordability of these devices, but nobody is addressing the challenges when it comes to accessing the spares of these devices in case of a breakdown. Like, for example, replacing a screen of a Samsung device is more like you rather go and buy a new one. So that is the question that have been evaded for long, and I felt I need to put it across. Yes, there has been strategies of loaning of the devices, but the guy who has acquired this device through a loan, and now when it breaks down, that is the end of it, because accessing the spare parts becomes a bigger challenge to the common man. That is an issue which I thought I would put it across to the stakeholders.
I want to raise my question to the panel, and this is in regards to the environment. Sorry. I'm one person who knows about, the world moving towards green technology. So I want to find out, what actions are you taking to minimize the negative effects that the ICT devices have on the environment? Thank you.
On the issue of manufacturing the devices locally. I would like to ask whether there are any actions that or plans that the government is putting in place to ensure that the young people, or rather, because you find that we spent, for example, like 20 years in school, and then after that, what we expect after that is working, going there outside to the industries to work and to earn. So is there any way that the government is trying to ensure that the technical part or the technical skills are being put in the system, in the education system, so that after school, immediately after school, there is no need of you going back to school to be taught something, yet you spent like 20 years in school? Thank you.
My name is Dr. Festus Member from Geospatial Communications. I would like to know, because you said that you bought a phone which had been manufactured at River Road. I want to know about those people who flash devices without even asking where where the people have gotten them from. Because in those, like in town, some people just snatch a phone from you and they go somewhere. Within a second, they have flashed it and they have sold it. And the government is doing nothing about it. Even laptops are being flashed and being sold at a throwaway price. You buy a phone at 20,000 and somebody sells it at 1,000. I mean, where are we going as a country? I want to know if there is action that is being done to kind of control such kind of situations. Thank you very much.
Tuko Imara, you'll get the answer shortly.
CA collaborate with other agencies like KEBS. You know, KEBS is the agency which is in charge of certification, to ensure that we don't get the situation like what my brother has shared, not finding keyboard anywhere, and to ensure that devices are properly certified as they enter into the market. Second question is, does CA also check or investigate the issue of spyware, especially in new devices? One of the devices was, I don't know if I can mention the name, Redmi came into the market, and one time there was a concern that the new phones are coming with spyware. So maybe you can address those issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving that side, yes, please.
Hello, I'm Felix Jeff from Truth Wireless Limited. My question majorly goes on a point they have raised there about e-waste management. So some years back, I was working with Kenya Power, and I did raise the same point because I was in their ICT department. We had a lot of old laptops and computers that had a small issue but was not being fixed. So on CAK, I think this should be a mandate to you that since almost 80% of our e-waste is communication equipment, how do you support R&D? And as you talk about manufacturing, companies like Huawei started by repairing routers before they started manufacturing when they got the experience. So do these discussions in such forums hold water when we make recommendations, or they just end here? I made the same recommendation in a platform like that in 2019, and I've never heard anything like that being discussed. We manage e-waste by R&D and recycling so that we can be able to maybe establish our manufacturing ability as a country.
Thank you. They will address the questions as per the way they have been pointed out to them, and also give their closing remarks. So I'll start with Charles and then proceed with the rest of the panelists in the order in which they are seated. Charles, if you can take the floor.
All right, I'll try to be brief for interest of time. There was a question regarding accessing spares and screens replacement cost involved in that. I would like, I kind of feel that I need to do a bit more of investment on our team in terms of reaching out and communicating to the market, because as a brand from our side, we are offering a product for which has 24-month warranty. None of our devices has less than 24-month warranty. So when you go to the stores and you're buying and you're trying to avoid all these illegal imports or second-hand products that are coming in, first of all, ask for your 24-month warranty. Number two, from a model we call A24 and above, all the way up to the Fold, we are giving you one free screen replacement for any accidental damage. This is our responsibility. We are not bringing products to transform them for the sake of selling. It's not just a business. It's an engagement we have done with consumers in the market. Some 5 years ago, we had a very strong team that was in Kenya that did a lot of research and collected views from consumers. And batteries were some of the main issues that were raised. And we have sorted that one out by making our batteries much more robust and much more long lasting. We don't have any battery that's less than 4,000 milliamperes or 3.5 milliamperes on it. We have brought down the cost of the screens. We have even gone to an extent of giving one free screen repair for any accidental damage. We are a responsible corporate and we take seriously consumers' views. And I love what Alice has brought forward. She's actually advocating for the consumer and what should be done by all other brands, including us, to step up and reach the consumer requests as they give on the same. On the other part, with regards to a nice lady here asked about where are computers going and how can we work moving ahead. Mobiles cannot be used in classrooms. Very interesting question, but I can tell you today for a fact that we are already having tablets being used in schools. Multiple schools, hundreds in East Africa. Rwanda is one very clear concept of how tablets are used in classrooms and even workplaces. Kenya has moved very fast in certain schools to be able to do that. Samsung has done a couple of charity activities in schools, especially in the Western region, to actually place tablets in classrooms to enable agility of the learning. You see, not everybody may be able to reach that classroom, but maybe the phone that the mother has in the village can deliver the homework to that child who is 300 kilometers away, or some form of learning. It's baby steps that will get us there to actually include everybody into the platform of the same. So yes, mobiles can be used in classrooms, and learning can reach deeper into this country by engaging in what is more agile and what is more flexible in terms of reaching the market. Maybe the last part on that part would be more on, a gentleman raised a question regarding about the device financing. I would like to state that what Samsung does, Samsung partners with our respective platforms in the market, from MNOs, that is mobile network operators like Safaricom, Airtel, or Telkom Kenya, and other partners in the market like M-Copper, Watu, PayPal, all these other partners in the market. And all these are financial institutions apart from the operators who are offering devices to the market. So we provide a platform that allows them to secure their investment when they're selling to the consumer. This is important for device affordability. If the financier cannot secure their money, they will not give you a loan or a product. So the discussion should be more on, is the interest rate high? Then that's a different platform to address bringing the cost down. But we have created facilitation of the same, because Samsung currently is the largest device financed product within Kenya and Eastern Africa. We are all over the region in terms of providing enabling environment that will make affordability possible. So the financial part of that is a different discussion that can be repaired through different policies to be carried through, and also our operators, that is our big operators, the Safaricom, the Airtel, to come up, because they're much more able and agile to offer customer real value when it comes to also postpaid. Create a bigger platform that allows the consumer to choose what is the best platform for them.
The comment on VoLTE?
Right. VoLTE, for those who don't understand it, is voice over LTE. I think Samsung was the first one to launch VoLTE here in Kenya in collaboration with Safaricom some 2.5, 3 years ago on the same. With regards to the tests that Samsung has done for VoLTE in this market, our tests have passed with both operators on the same. Kenya is able to carry out VoLTE, and it has been running with most of the operators through and through on the same. So yes, we have it running in the market. So it's about activation of the same, and it's about a bit more improvement that's required from the operator side in order to penetrate and reach more into the market.
Thank you. So our friend from JTL, you can see Charles behind the tent afterwards. Leonard?
So for that part, on the JTL part, Samsung does not allow any of its software to be used without testing, because we are aware of complaints on quality. Even 5G, even 4G, before we allow the usage of that, we have to test, unlike most vendors, because the experience of this device is very important for the consumer on 5G. I don't want you to say that 5G on Samsung is poor, VoLTE on Samsung is poor. We need to test the network and then authorize for its usage. Then that will be assured there's no consumer conflict on the same. And that's why by now, Samsung has already delivered all our devices currently from A24 upwards are 5G ready and ready for use. We're just stepping up ahead of the plan on the same.
Thank you
So
very
thank
much.
you. JTL will talk after this.
Thank you very much. Len?
Yep, thank you, Barak. Thank you for the great questions. I think I'll just respond to two. The one on skills, which someone raised over here, and then another one for the ICT devices and environment. So, as an ongoing PhD student, this is probably, I'll speak to the universities. I think we need to revise the way we teach our students, particularly at the university level, but as regards to having the skills to manufacture anything, not taking longer studying and not having a skill to do something really. I think that's a gap that the universities need to address. Maybe it's a separate forum, but that is something to be followed from that point of view. But on the other hand, as an independent or a student or any other developer or engineer trying something, I think there are already networks within the country, particularly, I've been part of setting up different maker spaces across the country. So they're definitely looking at building or just bringing the engineering of some of these devices out, including IoT devices. So I think you should also reach out to such networks. We should also reach out to such networks. And again, there are so many institutions, like Afralti is offering so many courses that will skill you up to be able to develop some of these engineering aspects or deep engineering concepts that you need to have. So you need to be checking them as well. You need to check the Afralti's website as well, and just get to equip yourself with what courses will make sense to you. And then there's also Strathmore University. There's also other universities in the country. So for you to have a skill, really, largely it comes from you and you reaching out to networks. But at the same time, I also agree that this needs to be addressed from an institutional point of view. In terms of ICT devices and environment, I think it would have been great to have NEMA in this discussion, because largely, again, we need to have what is the disposal policy around ICT devices. That's key, where all of us are putting in inputs to make sure that works very well. But also, last year I was involved in a GSMA project that was looking at climate financing. And I think we need to also have a discussion like that being led internally from the country. So climate financing, looking at disposal of ICT devices. And just following up to the first question I've responded on skills. For those makers who are building IoT systems, you really don't have to buy new resistors and new capacitors and some of this stuff. You could actually take a beat-up machine, which has some of these things that are going to be destroyed. You just desolder out a resistor and you use on your new device. So those are some of the things that makers also need to think about. And while you're doing that, you're actually saving the environment, because some of this will just go to waste. But in general, I think it's key, and Communication Authority would lead this in collaboration with NEMA, just get how do we handle the ICT devices disposal policy. And speaking to what the gentleman here was saying in terms of, I think a point he raised in 2018 around e-waste and what they're doing. I think that's a thing we need to build around it. So the policy need to extend to the level of climate financing, particularly on such initiatives. So you need to have a fund that supports what you do, and at the same time, you now network with entrepreneurs that will take some of the e-waste to translate that into other new products. So that's all I can do for now.
Thank you, Leonard. We are running over time for the rest of the panelists. Chai Napoa. Mr. Naik.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I will go quickly over the questions raised. I'll talk about collaboration. We collaborate with KEBS and other organizations. We have MOUs with these organizations. We also attend the technical committees that they usually invite us in when they develop standards. Another question is on online platform, where the gentleman brought up on. We're currently reviewing the act. I think it was updated yesterday by the journalist. We're reviewing the act of the regulations. And under postal and courier, online platform is a key concern that is coming. So I think the challenges that we experience will be addressed properly once the new bill goes through with the changes to the act. And then I want to talk about questions from geospatial communication. It's illegal to reprogram or tamper with devices. And this is one of the challenges that the system that Communication Authority was to implement, which was then called Device Management System, was going to sort out such issues. Because when you reprogram, definitely you're going to put an invalid or cloned IMEI. So the system that we were to develop, which we were taken to court the way I explained earlier, was supposed to address this and other issues on phones that have cloned IMEIs, invalid IMEIs. This was a system that was really going to help the public, and we'll come back to you for public consultation and awareness, hoping that the project will continue. Then finally, there was a question on spyware concerns. I would like to educate you that we have a department that squarely deals with cyber security matters, and even the subject matter experts are within the room, so we can discuss that over tea. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kiruba?
You know, we have single board computers, which are very cheap, $30. And you just plug it on your home TV, you have a keyboard, and your child can use that computer to learn code. You can write stuff on it, and they're actually very powerful than the Pentium computers we used to have previously. For example, if you look at the Raspberry Pi 4, it has 8 GB of memory, and it is a $35 single board device, very small device, very affordable, and those are the things we are talking about, Makerspace and Fablab being able to develop these things, and also even sensitizing the public that these two devices are available. That computer that costs like $5, that single board computer, it doesn't use, you just plug it on your TV and you put a keyboard, and it uses Linux. Extremely fast than the expensive laptops that cost $500. Because just a Linux does not have bloatware or other software on top of it that is making it slow and all that. And children can use it to learn. There are people have gone to industry, to companies, and have found people with those two devices on their computer, using it, even the reception, using it in their day-to-day work, because they are actually just as good as any other computer. On the issue that was raised on training that Mabella was trying to talk about, is that we should all appreciate that industry and innovation runs faster than academia, because at the industrial level is where things are happening, in the market is where things are happening. So academia is just playing catch up on what is happening in the industry. So probably it's for the TVETs and the institutions to also reinvent their curriculum fast enough with the industry. But if we are still teaching people 20-year stuff now, those problems on capacity building will still be there.
Thank you. Alice, wrap it up for us.
Okay,
I see
thank
Mark
you.
is ready to
Thank
tell
you.
us what's next.
Thank you so much. Before I wrap up, let me just point this out, that ICT is an enabler. In our 4 key agendas that were introduced by the former president, ICT is an enabler, and this is something that needs to be taken very seriously. It's like electricity that we're using right now. So for that to, and also we witnessed this during the COVID-19. We thought it would take longer for us to realize that, but during COVID-19 we are able to realize that ICT is very key, and this is something that everybody should not be left behind. And that's why we are talking about inclusivity. Inclusivity is not about you and me, women and men, no. It's about every other person that is in the society. The mama mboga down there at the grassroots, wale ambao wako pale mashinani. And let's also get to know that from the simple survey that was done here, it's only about 30% of the population of Kenya that live in towns and cities. That is very true. And there's somebody that is in Mashinani, 70% of them that are in Mashinani. We buy these devices as consumers for the needs that we want to use them for. So we don't buy ili kwe maridadi, wacha tusidanganyane. We buy because of what you want to use it for. My mother, my grandmother down there wants a device that maybe atatumiwa M-Pesa from me so that she can be able to utilize it down there. So how can we make these devices affordable? Somebody said, I think it's Barack who said that Wakenya wapendi vitu za bure. Hatusemi tupewe za bure. This is the thing. Tukishanunua, once we buy those devices, we are also making somebody to make some profit somewhere else. Why can't the service providers take upon themselves, partner with the companies like Samsung, partner with other Techno and all those companies, let them give the devices for free like other economies are doing, and then they can now earn from the airtime, not really earn directly. The company, the internet providers will pay beforehand. And that way it will even improve the quality of those devices that will be in the market. And finally, to CA, you have a responsibility. Invest in research, in serious research. Coming and asking us about what we should, to give you solutions, yes, it's good, but invest in research. Get to know. You've been tasked by us, the citizens and the consumers of Kenya, to take care of us. Invest in research so that the findings that you get, this is what you'll use as a threshold to ensure that the companies are coming for licenses are not given licenses, but they'll be given licenses based on the baseline that you would have come up with from the research that you carried. Serious research. So that when we are going forward, we know that the government really takes care of the citizens and consumers have that right to be taken care of by the government. So we are looking up to CA next time to go do serious research so that whenever maybe Samsung, another Samsung, a company like Samsung comes up, they'll tell them, then give us your framework. How are you going to dispose the waste that you are going to, after using your device? What's your plan for waste disposal at the end of the day? Because we have also to mind the environment. So those are some of the areas that we, because of time,